Okay.
It's called Blue Letter?
Yeah.
BlueLetterBible.org. And that one has got just excellent. It's got the parsing and everything else. And it's got pronunciation.
Yes.
So you've got pronunciation, the parsing. Now by parsing we mean, we haven't gotten into that yet. We will in the next week or two. But that's the changes. We're going to get now probably of the night. In fact, perhaps of the 2 nights, this is going to be the most important lecture coming up. We're going to see this thing called inflection. Inflection. So we'll get going on that now. But very good. Yeah. So there's things you can get for free. Let me show you. Now this, I bought this program. I got started on this because it was only $39. And I thought, hey, I'll be a big spender. But of course, that is, that's like a car. If you want the steering wheel, that costs more. Well, not quite that bad. But this one.
That one's expensive.
This one here is the one I ended up getting, and I use it quite a bit here. But it's just like this one that you have there, except a little bit different there. And it has here, for instance, it has the Greek word up here, and then this is the lexical form, and then it has here the parsing, which yours has too, and then it has pronunciation. Same thing, except yours is free.
Right.
This one here, I got the engine. That was $39, but then of course this for the whole Bible in Hebrew and Greek. I don't think I should tell you because it might discourage you. Go to the free one. You really want to know though, well, ask me, but I don't want to discourage you.
What were you clicking on there? It says VMPP.
This is what they call parsing. This is a verb. It's in the present, passive imperative, second person plural, which we haven't gone into.
Oh, okay.
But when we get into it, you'll say, oh. But what you had to do in seminary was you had to memorize all these different forms. I don't remember them. If I ever knew them, I guess I did at one time. Now, I just click on that. That's in the primer approach, that's the big difference. If you talk to anybody that's gone through 2 years of Greek, the first year is just memorization. Drives you nuts. And the second year becomes interesting. So what we've done is skip the first year and got to the interesting part. Because we're going to let the computer do all that memorization for us.
Okay.
Which it's good at.
Oh yeah, let me tell you, it's the way to do it.
And you're not.
No, and
So in seminary.
as they say, our forgetteries are better than our memories. Sometimes, oftentimes, mine for sure. Okay, all right. Okay, we've done this one, so let me go to the next one here. Okay, we've done this one. All right, this, if we have time, we'll go over this. No, wait, this is it. This is what I want right here. Inflection. Very important lecture here. Very important. Let me get it here. This one here, you can go to their website, but they'll charge you. I paid the fee, so we'll be able to see it. But if you want to see this, you're going to have to pay the money on the website.
How much is it?
In this session, we're going to focus on something called inflection. Now, when we started this series, I talked about inflection, and I said that after the alphabet, it's the fact that Greek is an inflected language that makes it the most different from English. Okay, English is not, for the most part, an inflected language. Greek is an inflected language. And so it's this issue of inflection that, to the new English person who's looking at Greek and looking at the tools, it's this issue of inflection that makes Greek seem really weird and really difficult to understand, okay? So we're going to focus on inflection. Now, inflection actually isn't that difficult. It's just different, okay? So you can do this. I'm going to be using some technical terms, some technical grammatical terms, and I'm going to be showing some different Greek forms. These are all for illustration, okay? Everything that I talk about in this session, I'm going to elaborate at later sessions, but I need to use some of this terminology. But don't worry about trying to learn it, okay? If I talk about the nominative or accusative case, don't worry about memorizing those terms. Well, there's plenty of time to do that later, okay? But I need to use these as illustrations for you to help you understand inflection. What is inflection? Let's start with English. If you saw 3 words, bill, cat, and bit, okay, how would you make sense of that? Grammatically, how would you understand? Specifically, how would you understand who is doing the biting, and how would you understand what is receiving the biting, who's being bitten, okay? Well, in English, everything's word order, okay? We're not inflected. We rely on word order. So if you saw bill and cat and bit, and you want to know who's doing the biting, what would we do? Well, we would look to see what word comes right before the verb, and that we call the subject. So the subject is what's doing the action of the verb. And then we would look for the word that follows the verb, because that is what's receiving the action of the verb, and we call that a direct object, okay? But it's all word order, isn't it? The subject, what's doing the verb, comes before it. The direct object, what's receiving the action, is coming after it. Or what about if you saw a sentence that had the words brown, Bible, and car? How would you know whether it was a brown Bible or a brown car? Well, again, in English we use word order, and in English we put our adjectives right in front of our nouns. So either you would see brown Bible or you would see brown car, right? But the point is, in English, everything is word order. Okay, now, word order has meaning in Greek, but that's like a 2nd or 3rd year issue. For the most part, the order is not significant. To state it another way, Greek doesn't use word order to indicate subjects and direct objects. Because Greek is an inflected language, it has a totally different set of linkages. It has a totally different way of saying, wherever you find this noun, it has a way of saying this is the subject or this is the direct object, okay? But it's not word order. It's a different linkage system. Now, if you were learning traditional Greek, you would spend most of your first year memorizing all of these linkages, okay? And there's a lot of them, and it takes a long time to memorize them. What we're doing in the primer approach is that we're simply using our software and tapping or clicking on these forms, and it will tell us the linkage, okay? So we don't have to memorize all of these patterns. Okay, having set out the issue that English deals with word order and Greek is inflected, I can get to the definition of inflection. Inflection simply means that a Greek word is going to change its form based on one of 2 things. It's going to change its form based on its function in the sentence, and it's going to change its form based on its meaning, all right? So let's look at verbs, and then we'll look at nouns, and we'll spell out how words change based on their meaning and based on their function in the sentence. Why do Greek words inflect the way they do? Okay? All right. Well, let's start with John 3:16. This is what it looks like in the Greek. And to go word for word, hutos means in this way. Gar is for. Agapesin is he loved. Notice it doesn't mean loved or loves. It means he loved. Past tense. We'll come back to that. Ha-theos means God. And then ton is the. And then the next word on the second line is cosmon, which is world. So word for word, this is in this way for he loved the God, the world. Obviously, we don't translate the God, we just say God. Now, before we go any further, let me just mention something. When you hear John 3:16 translated with the word so, how do you understand so? For God so loved the world. Well, I think there's only one way to understand it, and that is saying that God loved the world so much. One of the reasons, though, we're taking this primer approach and helping you to understand how to use Strong's Bibles and interlinears is so you can do Greek word studies, right? And if you check this word, if you tapped on so, and it said, well, the Greek word is hutos, and you went and looked up hutos, guess what? Hutos does not mean so in the sense of so much. It's just not what the word means. Hutos means in this way. What John 3:16 is really saying is, in this way God loved the world, He gave His Son. So again, just a little reminder as to why you're doing this. And hutos doesn't mean so in the sense of degree. It's so in the sense of matter. Anyway, all right. Well, let's get back to inflection. If you look at John 3:16, it's in this way for agapison is He loved. So let's focus first on the verb agapison. We'll come back and talk about the theos and cosmon in a second. But let's focus on the verbs first. And let's talk about inflections for verbs. Now, what's important to see, though, in this point is that agapison means He loved. Past tense, okay? He loved. This is the inflected form. There's a very basic distinction that's important that you get, and that is the difference between an inflected form and a lexical form. Okay, this is just a crucial distinction. If you were to look at John 3:16 and you would see the Greek word is agapison, and you go, oh, I want to do a Greek word study, I want to look it up. And you would look it up in your dictionary, guess what? You wouldn't find it. It doesn't exist in the dictionaries. Greek dictionaries don't discuss words under all their different forms that you find them in the Bible, in all the different inflected forms. But rather what we've done with dictionaries is that we've settled on one form. And we discuss what a word means under that one form. And we call that one form the lexical form. Now, in language study, we don't call them dictionaries, we call them lexicons. And that's why this is called the lexical form. So the lexical form of a word is, in a sense, its basic form. It's the form that a word will be found in a dictionary. And we also call these lemmas, by the way. Some computer programs do lemma searches, and what they're doing is searching on the lexical form and not the inflected form, but more about that at another time, okay? All right. So you have these two basic forms. You have the lexical form, which is the form of the word it's going to have in the dictionary. And this word in its lexical form is agapao, all right? And if you found agapao in the biblical text, you would translate it as I love, okay? It's I, which is considered first person, more about that later, and it's in a present tense, so it's I love. But agapao was inflected so that John could say he, and it was inflected so that he could shift from the present tense to a past tense, and you get agapison, okay? So agapao is the lexical form, the basic form, in a sense. But in John 3:16, the actual form that occurs has been inflected. It's been changed because its meaning is different. It's not I love, it's he, and it's not I love in the present, it's he loved past tense, all right? So that is an example of inflection. Now, if you look at the inflected form and the lexical form, you'll see that there's some characters in common, aren't they? The gamma, alpha, p are the same in both. But you notice that things have been changed at the beginning of the verb and at the end of the verb, okay? That the first alpha has gone to an eta, and the second alpha has also gone to an eta, but then you have sigma, epsilon, nu, okay? So in a sense, what happens in the Greek verbal system is that we have a set of prefixes and a set of suffixes. And an example of a suffix is what's called the personal ending, all right? In agapao, the personal ending is the omega, it means I. In agapison, the personal ending is that epsilon nu, which means he, or she, or it, okay? And so the verb has inflected by changing prefixes and by changing suffixes. One of the suffixes are the personal ending. So this is an example of inflection due to change in meaning, okay? I to he, present tense loves, to past tense loved, all right? Now, if you look at this a little more closely, I want to point out a couple of different things. If you have agapesen, that epsilon nu is considered third person. Okay, and again, we'll talk about this more later. But first person is I, second person is you, third person is he, she, it, everything else. Okay. And what we're going to find out is that one of the linkages that exists in Greek between a verb and its subject is this issue of person. That if the subject is first person, you have to have a first person personal ending on the verb. If the subject is third person, as it is in this example, you have to have a third person ending. Again, don't worry about the details. I'm just trying to help you understand what inflection is, okay? So what has happened is that in this sentence, theos is the subject. Theos is considered third person, and so the verb has to have a third person personal ending attached. Theos is singular, so you have to have a third person singular personal ending on the verb, okay? So there's your inflection. Agapao has gone to agapesin. Now, if you really wanted to say that the gods, plural, love the world, then, theos would change to theoi. We'll talk about that in a second. But the personal ending has to change because now the verb has to be not he loved, but they loved. And so what you had before was an epsilon. Now you have an alpha as a third person plural personal ending. Now again, don't memorize these forms. I just want you to show how the personal endings are changing based on whether it needs to say he or they. All right? But there's more going on in this verb than just change of person, right? That there's also a change from agapao, which is present, to agapesin, which is a past time. How do you do that in Greek? Well, you inflect the verb. Okay, how do you do that? Well, we have a set of prefixes and we have a set of suffixes. And so in this particular word, if you want to turn it into a past time, you lengthen the initial alpha to an eta, and then you stick that sigma in there. Okay, you see that? Okay, that's an example of inflection to indicate past time. So what we have is this situation where we're going to have all these different inflected endings. Whether the biblical writer wants to say I love, or he loved, or they loved. And you need to be able to get to the lexical form to be able to do a word study. So you have to get from all those different inflected forms back to agapao. Now, again, in traditional Greek, you would simply memorize all these linkages. That's what takes so long to learn Greek. In the primer approach, what we're doing is we're using Strong's numbers.
Lots
and
of headache.
Strong's numbers provides the connection between all the inflected forms of the word that as it occurs in the biblical text to take you back to the lexical form, back to the lemma, so you can do a word study. All right? All right, very good. Well, let's go back from verbs and back to nouns, okay? And let's look at the same kind of thing that happens in nouns. So go back to John 3:16. What you see is, in this way for he loved, and then ha theos is translated God. In Greek, we use the article ha in front of it, but in English you don't translate it. So we translate ha theos as God. And notice that the ending is a sigma. And then we have ton cosmon, which is the world. Notice that the ending is a nu. Now what's going on? Well, we have exactly the same kind of situation with nouns that we had with verbs, because we have this important distinction between the inflected form and the lexical form. Now the lexical form of this word is cosmos. It ends in a sigma. So if you were to get a Greek dictionary and look up cosmos, you would find the discussion of this word. Okay? All right. But in this particular sentence, the Greeks needed to indicate that it's God, that God loved the world, that the world is the direct object, that the world is receiving the action of the verb. And so what it does is it changes its ending. All right? Just like Greek had suffixes that would change to indicate changes in person and number, so also in nouns, you have changes of a suffix at the end to indicate whether something is a subject or something is a direct object. So in the case of this word, that nu indicates that cosmos is functioning as the direct object of the verb. Now in verbs we call them personal endings, but in nouns we call them case endings. So that nu is a case ending that is stuck on to the end of the word to indicate that it's functioning as the direct object of the verb. Now what's interesting is, let's say you wanted to make this plural. Let's say you had to inflect this word not because of its function, but because of its meaning, because it's one world or it's more than one world, okay? What you would find that is that if they were functioning as a subject of the sentence, it would be cosmoi, all right, omicron iota. But if it were functioning as the direct object, it'd be cosmos, omicron upsilon sigma, all right? So those are all different case endings. So if it's one world and it's functioning as a direct object, it's cosmon. If it's more than one world functioning as a direct object, it's cosmos, omicron upsilon sigma. Okay, see how that works? Okay, so inflection in nouns, just like verbs, just means that the form of the word is going to change based on its meaning, singular or plural, and its function. For example, a subject or a direct object. So if we look at that a little more closely, what we see is that in the sentence, egapisen ha theos ton cosmon, that sigma on the theos is actually what's called a nominative case ending. There's 4 cases in Greek, and the case that you put a word into to indicate that it's a subject is called a nominative case, and that's what the sigma is doing, all right? Now, it just so happens that in determining the lexical form of a noun, it is in fact the nominative. That's why if you see a word in the dictionary and you see it in the text functioning as a subject, they're going to be identical. Okay, the lexical form for nouns is the nominative singular form of the noun. But when you get to cosmon, you see the new. Okay, that new is a different case ending. It's what's called an accusative case ending. The accusative case is the case that the Greeks put the word into to indicate that it's receiving the action of the verb, that it is in fact the direct object. So what you have here is a case of inflection, where you have the sigma telling you it's functioning, that theos is functioning as a subject, and the nu that tells you that cosmon is functioning as the direct object. Now this is a paradigm I like to show just to indicate how much easier the primer approach is than the traditional. There are 4 cases in Greek. The top line is the nominative, so that's the form these words are going to take if they're the subject of the sentence. And then you have 2 other cases, and the bottom row is the accusative case, the 4th case. And those are the forms of those words if they're functioning as a direct object. And in fact, there's many, many more paradigms. This is called a paradigm. Many, many more paradigms like this that traditional approach requires students to learn. And again, what we're going to do is simply tap on the inflected form, and we're going to be given this information in our software. So again, just like we did with verbs, if you have inflected forms, this is the Greek word for word, it's logos. And so in the singular, you're going to see it either as logos, legu, lego, or lagon, okay? Logos if it's functioning as a subject, lagon if it's functioning as the direct object. But you need to get from these inflected forms back to its lexical form, which is the nominative singular, which is logos. How do you do that? Strong's numbers. That's why the Strong's number system is so important. Okay? All right. Well, that's it for inflection, and hopefully it didn't overwhelm me with some of the details, but again, I wanted you to see what inflection is. So, just to review, inflection means that Greek words are going to change their form, okay, kosmos to kosmon to kosmoi to kosmos. Greek words are going to change their form based on function, for example, is it the subject or the direct object, and they're going to change their form based on meaning. Are they singular or are they plural? All right? For verbs, you get inflection by a set of prefixes and a set of suffixes. Now, there's more suffixes than just personal endings, but they're an important part, and they're one of the suffixes that we have. So you inflect a Greek verbal form with prefixes and suffixes, and then you inflect Greek nouns with suffixes, and we call those suffixes, they're different case endings. Okay, so you're seeing how words change based on their form, change their form based on their meaning and their function in the sentence, right? All right, very good, very good.
Very good for Bill. That was no problem at all for Bill. Bill understood that perfectly. All right, Bill, thanks. Appreciate the effort there. All right, let me see. Let me go here.
Can we watch it again?
me show you here on, this is my interlinear. This is the same verse that John 3:16. Here's the same thing that he except in mind here. Now here's what he's talking about. Here it is in the Greek the Greek order. Now in English we know this one by memory. For God so loved, right?
Mhm.
But as you can see, it's not word for English. And here is this hutos, or so. Now, did you catch that when he said, how do we normally think of so? How do we normally interpret that? As so much, right? I'm sure I've heard that as a kid. God so loves so much, how much? And yet, as he brings it out, and I did check it with Vines, which Vines, agrees there, that it means in this way. It's not so much, it's in this way that he, gave his life for us. That's the so, that's what it meant, not so much. Obviously, that has a lot of so much to it though, right? So it's not that big of a deal, but it's interesting there. But notice the Greek order, you have for, agapeson, and yet we have it in English, for God so loved. Now here's what he was trying to say. This word, theos, you can tell from the ending of that word, that is a subject. We're not going to go into, learning each of these, but that's what tells you that's the subject, is the way it ends. If it were God's, it would be theoi, for plural. And so, in other words, the translators know, because of the ending, that's the subject. Now, if you got your book there, turn to page 48. Way to refresh, review, or if you don't review, learn English grammar, right? Okay, and so here it is under English grammar verbs there. If you learn that, what's the verb do? Remember, the verb is the action word, right? It's the action word or state of being, which are different forms of the verb is, am, are. So that's the verb, that's the action, and then the noun is, the subject that is doing the action, or if it's a direct object, it's receiving the action. All right, I'm going to give you a sentence here. The boy hits the ball. The boy hits the ball. What's the subject? What's the verb?
Hits.
What's the direct object?
Ball.
The boy hits the ball to me. What's the indirect object? To me. The boy hits the ball to me. All right. In English, it's all word order. How do we know who the subject is or what the subject is? It's word order. It's word order. But in Greek, it's what they call case. And it's the ending, or what he calls the inflection, of this word that tells you it's the subject. Now that makes a difference when they're trying to figure out, for instance, if you read the pronoun him in the New Testament, and you want to say, well, what does that fit with? Is that, or it? Does it fit with, what part of the sentence does it fit with? And that's why it makes a difference. Well, these have to agree there. So the point here is that in English, it's word order. We have very little inflection. We have a little bit. For instance, what's the difference between him and his? Which one's the pronoun and which one's the direct object? Him and his. Is the boy hit the ball to him or to his?
To him.
That's the direct object. Okay. But we change it if we go to his, because that's the pronoun. So we might say his ball. So there's the difference between him and his. So what have we done in English? We've inflected it. We've changed the M to an S or the S to an M. So we have a little inflection in English, but not like Greek. Greek inflects just every verb is inflected and every noun is inflected. So that's the big difference between Greek, and that's why if you there's a popular, in fact, let me pull it up here while I'm talking here. How many downloaded eSword, by the way? eSword is the best free program you can get. Free. I emphasize that word free. It's free, and it's excellent, and it's got all kinds of material in it. And this Rick Meyer, I think I told you this, but let me tell you again in case I didn't. He's a professional software programmer by occupation, and so he wrote this himself and gives it free, just because he wants to get the gospel out. And so if you have, for instance, here different versions that he has here. Let's see which one this is. Yeah, let me go to this here. This is.
Is it $1.99?
What's that?
Is eSword $1.99?
No, it's free. eSword is free.
Free for you.
Not for Mac products.
Your phone.
I don't know what
I
that.
was gonna say, it says $1.99.
Oh, that might. Oh, is that for your phone
Yeah.
or your iPad?
Yeah.
All right, that's the app charge.
Oh,
That could be.
okay.
In fact, John, I know John Heelan, Tristan, we got that for Tristan on his iPad, and I
Yeah.
think it was $6.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you go a computer, it's free. If you go on an app, I guess there's a small charge.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
$6 for God, it's worth it.
huh?
I said $6 for God, it's worth it.
Well, yeah, but all right. So, but this is now. Let me go to this one here. I'll show you what we're doing here in this one. All right. So here's what he's talking about. This is the form here, and he called it agapison, which is what they call technically aorist, past tense. It's not exactly past, but for our purposes, it's past. But as he said, you can't, if you even have a Greek dictionary, or what they call lexicon in language, you're not going to find agapison in it. It won't be in it. Because a guy named Augustus Strong, who lived back, I'm telling you how old this guy was. I'll tell you when this guy lived. Before Bob was born.
Oh, that's a long time ago.
I'm telling you. Does that kind of give you an idea? Huh?
The
All right.
dinosaurs are roaming the planet.
This guy is ancient, but smart. Smart. And he got some of his buddies together. Bill Mount says about 100 of his buddies together. And they decided that they would write a definition for every word in the Bible. Old Testament and New Testament. And when I was going to school back in the 70s, in fact, I've got them at home. I never look at them. But they're big, thick. The spine is that thick. And they're big books. If you've seen a Strong's Concordance. How many have seen a Strong's Concordance? Oh, several of you have. All right. Well, you can see it. But they also had, which was popular, Young's.
Got that too.
Oh, you've had that too. All right, and they used to say the difference was young if you're young, and strong if you're strong. And supposedly the difference was young did not have all the words. This is what, in fact, you will see the words Strong's Exhaustive Concordance. And so, obviously, the better, the more popular was Strong's because it supposedly had all the words in it. Now, what they found out now, though, is that some of the copies that they have now were not available to Strong. So there are some words that Strong didn't even have. And so they've changed it now, some of the scholars, to what, there was two other guys, but they abbreviated GK. It's no big deal, but there's, I think he said about 400 more words in it. for our purposes, the most popular without question is the Strong's. So, you have it on, what was that, blue what?
Blue Letter Bible.
Blue Letter Bible, write that down, because that obviously is a good.
Everything's here.
It's got the
This is the
Strongs
person.
and everything right there.
Mm.
And so, if you click on it right there, it'll tell you, for instance, here in King James, that it was in King James, love 135 times, and translated beloved 7 times. Now that helps you. And agapao. And agapao was the word that the Christians put great emphasis in. But it wasn't as popular, as well used, before the Christians came into it. So that's one in which it changes from that time. Now, so what this does here is, when we go to the Strong's here, we know then the lexical word, agapao. That's going to always be in the first person. Now, I'll take you to another page on that. So this type of the Blue Letter Bible or the program, whatever, is very, very helpful on that. So that any word you want to find out what God, well, you go back here and again, it gives you that. Now, compare that, if you remember, with the beginning of the session tonight, I gave you Vines, which was a couple of paragraphs there. Obviously, Strong's is much shorter, just a short definition. He has his right here, just a short definition right here, just a little bit here. So it's for a quick word, but if you want to do an in-depth study, Strong's will get you started, but you can't stop there if you want to learn more.
This one has vines in it also.
It's got, okay, Vine, that's great.
So you go to Strong's and then you can click on
Wonderful,
vines.
that's blue letter. Okay, I'm gonna send that out in the next email so that everybody gets it, even the ones that are here, because that's very helpful.
And free at that.
Yeah,
And free,
and free, you can't beat the price.
as long as
Vines
you're
is free.
online.
Yep, there it is. So, all right, now let me take you to something else here. We're frugal.
I'm cheap.
Mace, we're frugal. Okay,
If it ain't free, I ain't using it.
we got it. All right. Okay, so we've done that. Okay, again, the Greek word is going to change its form based on its function in a sentence or its meaning. That's the main thing here. Now, let me take you quickly to this. Turn to page 147 in your book there. And you can come up, can you see there, or you can see up here, Greg, if you need to look at one.
Yeah.
Look on with Mace here.
Okay.
He'll be helpful. Or John's got one too. 147. It's in your book here. All right. Now if we understand a little bit about English, we're going to be able to capture this very, very quickly. All right, when they're talking about here, this is the word loose, which we had in our vocabulary. Luo. Now this means, the form, the inflected form is luo, and it's I loose. Now that is what they call, it's in the present. I mean, in other words, I loose, I am loosing, it could be translated. Now, if it was I was loosed, okay, I'll give you, okay, here's an active sense. The boy hits the ball. That's active.
Mhm.
Boy hits the ball, active sense. If I say the boy was hit by the ball, then the boy is receiving the action, and that changes it to passive. When the subject receives the action, it's no longer active, it's passive. Now, right over here, in the active for the first person means I lose, it's luo. If I want to say I am loose or was loose, luamai. Then, of course, you have to learn a whole, this is called a paradigm, you have to learn a whole new set. Now, if you want to say you lose, singular. And again, again, this is the advantage of the King James. It uses the word thou. Now we say, we laugh at it. But that is the advantage of the King James. If you want to say you, plural, like you two or more people, luete, then in King James they would translate that ye. Thou or ye. And so that's the advantage. And you wonder, why did they do that? Well, they're giving you more information than the modern versions are. The modern versions just use you. And you have to figure out whether it's singular or plural. Unless, of course, you can go to the Greek, then you know. Huh?
Or y'all.
All right. Now, so here's the difference. I lose is luo. You lose, singular, lues. Okay, I'll say it and then you repeat it. Luo.
Luo.
Lues.
Lues.
That's you lose. Singular. You lose. Kathy. You lose. Greg. You lose. Jeff. All right. If I want to say he, she, or it loses, is what they call third person. Then we have lue. So first person, luo. Second person, lues. And the third person, lue. So inflection, in other words, by this change of the word, here the stem is lambda upsilon. That didn't change. It's the ending, what they call the suffix, or the beginning, what they call the prefix. So that's what changes. And so if we want to go down here to first person more than one plural, which is we, luamen. You say it, please. Luamen.
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 And if you want to say second person plural, you plural, luete.
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 So if I say you as a group, you lose, you release the class, you whatever, luete. So the Greeks can tell just from that one word, they know this, what it has to agree with the subject. And so they can tell from that one word. And if it's third person plural, here it's third person one person. Either he, she, or it. But if I want to say they, then it's luusi. Luusi. So let's just for fun go. This is the one in first year Greek, everybody learns this. Everybody learns this. Now, okay, I'll say it, you say it. Luo,
Luo.
lues,
Lues.
lue,
Lue.
luamen,
Luamen.
luete,
Luete.
luusi.
Luusi.
Now, everybody learns that when you take first year Greek. And he used the same word that, you talk to anybody that's taking Greek, they learn this, what they call paradigm. If you're going to go to passive, you have to learn luamai, lue, luatai, luamatha, luestha, and luantai. And then if you want to say future, you got a whole other bunch of things to learn. If you want to say with a different type of action, it just drives you nuts. We don't worry about that. What do? We tap on the word. And it's what they call parsing. Parsing. They didn't have this when I was going to take Greek back in the 70s. I would have cheated and used it, but they didn't have it. They had a book, in fact I've got it at home, hidden away, I never use it, that has every word and it parses it for you. But if they caught you with one of those, they'd flunk you, like, ooh, man, you're not learning this stuff. But today, we've got the computer. So, that's why we do it. All right, so, yeah, if we were in a traditional Greek course, we'd have you learn all these things, but we're not in a traditional Greek course. The only thing I want you to do is to understand the changes that's going on. So that when you read a commentary and he begins to talk about, third person, second person, or active sense, you don't go, what in the world's active sense? You're going to know. And we are going to go over the grammar so you understand what aorist means. You're going to understand what subjunctive means. So when you read these better commentaries, you get to that, you don't go, oh, hey, I'm lost. Okay, you're going to understand it. All right. So that's all that is. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes here. Now, this is our vocabulary here. Now, just help your neighbor. Help your neighbor. Remember, we're helping each other here. Translate that in English, please. you can write it down. Help work with your neighbor there. Using page 147 as a help. Using page 147 as a help.
Well, blepo is C.
Blepes. And what's that come from? What's the lexicon form? Lexical form. Blepo. We memorized that, right? Okay, so we're getting there. We're getting there. And it means, all right, so translate that with your neighbor there. Exactly. Kathy's question is an excellent question. Is a lexical form always the first person singular? The answer is yes. And that's why you won't find blepes in your lexicon, because it goes to the first person singular, which is blepo. And that's why, that's it. That's it. It's blepo. All right. I'll give you 30 seconds to talk with your neighbor, and we'll see who gets this right here. 30 seconds. I'm going to time it here. All right. Talk to your neighbor. There you go. Talk to Jennifer there. Talk with your neighbor. Come and see if you agree with your neighbor there.
What do you think?
Neighbor.
Well, that word said, it's what?
Second singular, look at the same thing.
Work with John back there, Greg. He's got his book. Work with John back there. Let's go back there and he'll share with you.
Excuse me. May I work with you?
I took Latin, so Latin's the same.
Huh?
I took Latin,
You took Latin?
Latin's the same.
Oh, is that the same?
I'm sure you have different endings.
All right, the same thing inflected then? All right. All right, well, see.
No one asked.
Singular and plural.
Okay.
Time's up.
All right, who thinks they have an answer? Who's brave? Nobody's brave. All right, that's fine. You say plural or singular?
Singular.
Okay, May says singular. Who agrees with Mace? Who has something else? Well, let's see what I have. Singular. Okay, you're getting it now, right? All right, Genoskes. Talk with your neighbor there. Talk to your neighbor.
You know?
Genoskes.
Does that mean to know? Huh?
No.
Gnosis? You know?
We get Gnostic.
I get Gnostic.
Yeah, that's right. Agnostic. You know what the A does?
It's,
Detracts.
It is negation. It's like the word no or un. So Gnostic is knowledge.
Yeah, I was doing
Agnostic,
good when I told that. I think I get that far, yeah.
A negates it. That's agnostic. Theist, from
God.
a theist, God. What's an atheist? The A, or the alpha in Greek, negates the word. So theos, or theist, is God, but atheist,
No God.
ungod.
Ungod.
No God. He's against God. Gnostic, knowledge. Agnostic, he doesn't know.
No. Mm.
So that's, so again, and so that's why you see this A, so often, and it negates it. All right, Genoskes. Can you say that? Genoskes?
Gnosis.
And what? Not Mace this time. He got this one last time. Let's see if somebody else is brave this time. Mariana? What?
Marina.
Marina? Am I saying that right? Okay, Marina, what'd you get?
She said you know.
You know singular or plural? All right, she right? She's got it. All right, here's another. Lambanes.
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 All right, what's it mean? You take. All right, now we're getting it. This is easy, huh? All right, graphe. Graphe.
Serape.
Graphe.
Traffic.
We got the Greek, don't we? Graphe, we got that part.
So it means something about writing, doesn't it?
Right, and Greg wasn't even here for the vocabulary. Well, you saw probably on YouTube though. Remember, what's the lexical form of this? Grapho, that's what you'd find in the lexicon. And graphe means what? Graphe,
I write.
I write. I write. Graphe is I write.
He, she, it writes.
It's not I write. Graphe is what? He writes, she writes, or it writes. What do they call that? Third person singular. Graphe.
What's the word description?
Graphe.
The same word.
They use that word graphe. They also use the word nomos for the word for law.
Okay.
as
Oh,
well.
really?
All right, he writes. Okay, here we go. Eke.
I have, it means to have, so, eke, he or she, I'll say he or she has,
Okay, what's the lexicon form?
echo,
Echo,
Echo.
or I have, and this one is translated,
eke,
which is English,
he has,
he,
she or it has.
she, or it has. What do we call third person singular, right? Well, you're getting it. Hey, this is good. Okay, he has. All right. Lege.
What, plege?
Lege.
Oh, Lego.
Sounds like Lego, doesn't it? There might be some connection between Lego, but I'm not sure. It probably is. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it could be.
What about Lego, you know, like the
I don't know.
Yeah.
Lege.
He says.
He, she, or it says. All right. Let's go to another one here. Oh, wait a minute. Now I got this over again. Let me go to another one here. Lambanamen. 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 What's the lexical form? Lambano, or remember the other word just for your education. Some books will refer to it as the lemma. Most of the time it's lexicon form. Strong's always goes back. Okay, so Strong's is always going to be present, active, indicative, first person. So this is going to be lambano. And this translation is what again? Lambanomen. Translate that for me. What is it? We take. There you go. All we do is look at that and my blepeta. No, bleta, excuse me, bleta. Maybe I wrote that wrong. I think I may have written that wrong. I missed it. Let's go to the next one here. Didaskusi. Didaskusi.
The dogs to think,
Didaskusi. No, it sounds like it, but it is.
the teeth. The dogs to teeth.
I think I heard it.
They teeth.
Okay, what would be the lexical form? Didasco, which is present, active, indicative, first person, which is I teach. That's the one we learned in our vocabulary. And here, this inflected form is didaskusi. Please say that.
Didaskusi.
Which translated in English is what?
They teach.
They teach. Third person,
Plural.
plural. So that's how the it ends there. All right, we could go through this, but I think you've got the idea. And besides that, we're here at the end of our. Whoops, this is the. All right. Page 24 in your book, 198. Let's flip over there real quick. If we had
That's your homework for next week.
30 weeks, we would take a chapter a week. We don't have 30 weeks. We've got 8 weeks.
See.
And this is already our second week. So what I'm doing is I'm picking out chapters, but, as you get into this, have at it. But one of the main things that I want to be able to give you some tools is how to do word studies. Word studies is probably the most important part of it. If you were here Sunday for Neil's excellent message, how many were here Sunday? That was an A+ message. I sent Neil a complimentary email. That was a fantastic message. I mean, he put it together. But if you notice, he shared the Greek word in it. Do you remember what it was?
No.
I don't remember what it was either. But I remember he said what it was, and I
He
thought,
did say what it
oh,
was.
yeah. But anyway, word studies are probably the thing from this course that you'll probably use the most of. So it's very important, and Mounce does a great job in chapter 24. So chapter 24, he talks about word study. It's a rather long chapter, but be sure and read it, and also go to the to page, include page 216, which looks like this. Read that. It's the verbiage section article on Kurios. Kurios means Lord. And throughout the New Testament, we have the Lord Jesus Christ. The Lord Jesus Christ. And so, this is a great word for us to do some study on. What does it mean, Lord? Now, Neil talked about that in the message. In fact, at the end, when he was calling for a commitment, he made sure people understood that that's a commitment. You make him your Lord. It's not just your Savior, not just fire insurance, but he's your Lord. Read this article. It's great. Hopefully, this will whet your appetite, and you'll say, hey, I want to learn some more. How to do better word studies. And that's what we'll work on next week. So read this. This will really get you ready, and we'll talk about it some more and go from there. So thank you for coming. We're right on time. Lord, thank you for our time together. And it's so good to get into your word. I pray, Lord, we'll be diligent, and we'll just dig into your word. We'll handle it accurately. We'll handle it as you want us to. I pray, Lord, that we'll not be lazy, but we'll make the effort to really learn what you're saying and use all these fantastic tools, the works of scholars that have put lifetimes so that we can understand your word better. And Lord, thank you for your word and for your Holy Spirit as they go together just to change us all the time. So thank you for each one that's here, and we pray for the ones that aren't here for whatever reason. We pray, bring them back, Lord, that they can just get into this and just help them in their Bible study. So thank you for tonight. And all God's people say,
Amen.
have a great week.